All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's 2 p.m. and I think we can start our session. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Lisak. I'm a senior transport specialist. So welcome and welcome back to the regional or webinar series on aviation and tourism. This is the third webinar. In the first two webinars, we discussed strategies to facilitate tourism recovery and growth from the devastating impact that COVID-19 has had on the aviation industry globally. But as we also mentioned before, this crisis is also an opportunity to reset CAREC aviation industry through reforms, new strategies, and restructurings. The objective of the webinar is to engage with the CAREC aviation community and start a dialogue with aviation stakeholders as CAREC looks to adjust the aviation pillar of the CAREC 2030 transport strategy to the current environment. Just going to do a quick overview of the CAREC aviation pillar activities. So regional aviation connectivity was recognized as a pillar core area for support in 2017, and a scoping study was prepared in 2018. Now aviation is one of the 5 strategic pillars of the 2030 transport strategy, and it was approved in November 2019. Now, in terms of activities in 2020, we circulated a draft version of the impact of COVID-19 on CAREC aviation and tourism in July, and then we published the updated report in November. This study was also presented in the first aviation webinar. We also circulated the Silk Road Air Pass proposal, which was presented at the second aviation webinar also last November. And we were planning to hold an in-person aviation workshop in 2020 to look at several priority topics for aviation webinar, such as the cargo market liberalization or cooperation on public health measures, but we had to postpone this event. We're still hoping to hold it in 2021, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. Today, there will be 2 presentations on new strategies, so low-cost airline potential and cargo development opportunities in CAREC. After the presentation, the webinar will continue with polling to collect feedback on the webinar series and to gauge interest in future webinars in the aviation workshop and the CAREC aviation program in general. So let me introduce quickly our 2 speakers today, which have been with us through the series of the 3 webinars. First speaker is Brendan Sobey. He is the senior aviation specialist and consultant for CAREC. Brendan has been involved with CAREC aviation program for 4 years, and he co-authored the aviation scoping study that was published in 2018, as well as a COVID-19 impacts assessment study. Second speaker is Simon Russell. He has 40 years experience in aviation and transportation development. He has worked with ADB for 4 years on the CAREC program, as well as an international aviation expert. Just a couple of reminders before we start. So you can choose your preferred language, English or Russian, by using the interpretation button, which is at the bottom of the screen. To ask a question in Russian or in English, you may click the raise hand button and wait to be acknowledged. And then you can unmute your audio when prompted. And to ask a question in English, you may submit it through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or in the chat box, but preferably in the Q&A button. With that, handing the floor over to you, Brendan.
Okay, thank you, Valerie, and thanks everyone for joining for this third webinar. And to start with, we've decided to just have a quick review of the first 2 webinars and to see if there's any questions from the first 2 webinars. So I'm just going to really quickly summarize the two presentations I did, and then Simon will quickly summarize the 2 related presentations he did, and then we'll see if there's any questions outstanding from maybe the last few weeks when you've had an opportunity to digest some of the material or listen into the recordings that have been available on the website. So the first webinar, a lot of it focused on COVID-19 impact and recovery strategies. I looked at the study that was completed around November of last year, and focused mainly on what we can do to recover the industry, aviation and tourism, in 2021 and beyond, focusing initially on domestic markets, and then later on this year the possibility of facilitating travel within CAREC, between the CAREC countries, through air travel bubbles or green lane arrangements. As well as looking and recommending some areas for cargo liberalization, as cargo has been a very important area during the pandemic, and will be actually a subject of one of the presentations today. And then in the second webinar, I did a presentation on Silk Road Air Pass, which was also a study from last year, and it's kind of falls under the same category, as we're really trying to facilitate recovery and better conditions in the future for airlines and for tourism companies. And the idea there is to facilitate partnerships between airlines, which have historically been quite weak or non-existent in the CAREC region, and through partnerships between airlines, and particularly the possibility of a Silk Road Air Pass, which is basically a scheme in which several airlines can jointly sell a package of tickets for travel within the region. We can facilitate travel within CAREC for both visitors coming from overseas, as well as for visitors from within the CAREC region, which is quite important, particularly in the earlier phases of the recovery, as I mentioned in the first webinar. So it's really all about helping the industry and to recover, and provide some thoughts and some potential products, or where we can work together to position CAREC for a rapid recovery, and position also CAREC competitively compared to other regions, because there will be a huge competition as borders reopen for tourism, and it's important for all the countries and stakeholders to work together to maximize that opportunity. That's kind of in summary. Obviously, there's a lot more that can be reviewed, but again, if you have any questions about those presentations, I'm happy to take them during this segment. And I'll just hand over to Simon to give a quick summary of what he was talking about in the first two webinars as well.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Valerie. Good afternoon, everybody. The first webinar topic that I covered was public and private sector cooperation as it relates to aviation and tourism. And in terms of the COVID restart, how important linkages across government and private sector will be. So in the country context for CAREC, it's very important that at country level, from an aviation strategy and tourism strategy, there's good alignment, and restarting markets and connectivity and how those things will occur. So what's the role of the public sector? What can government do with civil aviation and transport and economy, ministries of the economy, etc.? And how does that relate to the private sector with investors and airlines and airports in some cases that are looking to maximize the benefit for the country? So that was the first one in terms of public and private sector. The second one was how to develop air services and align tourism. So in a post-COVID world, some of the markets that were there before COVID may not be as strong as they were before. And equally, there may be some new markets that with some ease of travel to the country, and that relates to connectivity and frequency and potentially the types of air service. So within the CAREC region, there's an opportunity for intra-CAREC travel, and there's the opportunity for multimodal in terms of road and rail for short distance travel. But the distances are so large in CAREC that air travel is really the mode of travel to bring people into the region. Equally, sometimes within the region, air travel is the best way and the fastest way to move. How does that relate to tourism? And it's making sure or understanding the linkages between aviation and tourism. Often we've seen in CAREC and other regions that we've worked with where tourism has a strategy and aviation has a strategy, and the two don't quite synchronize. So aligning them is very important. Understanding the connectivity, understanding how to market the country, especially in a post-COVID world where travelers and global organizations are looking for safety of the air traveler. And that's not only the aviation sector, it's also a government role and a tourism role, that when travelers come to your country, they're not only entering a border safely, but they're also moving around safely within the country. And so the country's reputation is at stake as much as the industries, public and private sectors operating in the country. So we looked at those in the first two webinars, and just a quick overview. And as Brendan said, very happy to take some questions in this session as we move along. Thank you.
Okay, well, at this point, I don't see any questions, but of course, later on and during this segment, or later on during this webinar, if any time you have questions, please use the Q&A box or raise your hand. This particular session is not only about summarizing the last two webinars, but also it provides an interactive opportunity for airlines to share experiences. And we have a few airlines that have come forward to agree to share their experiences just for a few minutes each, where they can discuss what they've experienced during COVID and how they've adjusted and what they think is the situation going forward in the region. So I'm gonna start with the first airline being Air Astana, which doesn't really need much of an introduction. Everybody, I think, knows who Air Astana is. They are obviously one of the leading airlines in this region, and they also interestingly have launched a low-cost unit called Fly Air Astana, which I will be referring to in my low-cost carrier presentation later. And Richard Ledger, who's been with Air Astana for several years, almost from the beginning actually, has agreed to give us some thoughts. He's the VP Marketing and Sales, and I'll leave it over to Richard to share some of the experiences of Air Astana during this pandemic, and they've done some interesting things recently that he's going to be talking to us about. So thank you, Richard, for agreeing to speak and share.
Sure. Good morning, Brendan. Good to see you again. Good morning, Simon. Good morning, everyone from Almaty. Yeah, let's perhaps sort of cast our mind back a little bit over this last year to sort of really see what the impact was and how it's not quite as uniform as perhaps one could expect. When we look at our ASK, our available seat kilometers for the year of 2020, as a group, we were 47% down on the previous year, which is 28% less passengers. Sorry, can you hear me, Brendan? You're making a face at me.
Sorry, no.
You can, yes, good.
Yeah,
I hear you. Thanks.
Great. Sorry, I should have checked. So of course, as every carrier, massively impacted during this COVID period, with 28% less passengers for the year. But when we look at sort of the split of our business and how it's been adjusted, in fact, international passengers are down to 70% for the year, whereas Fly Air Astana, our low-cost carrier that you mentioned in your introduction, has actually increased its passengers by 110%. So domestically, we're about 8% growth on the previous year. So we've really seen this opportunity post-COVID, during COVID, for a domestic restart. Of course, it was quite a difficult restart. There was all sorts of sort of mandated social distancing, which of course is uneconomic. Is uneconomic. But it was a mechanism by which we were able to restart domestic flights after a month and a half of complete lockdown. The international restart has been more difficult. We have restricted capacity into Incheon and Istanbul and Domodedovo and Bishkek, Tashkent and Tbilisi, but it's much slower to recover based on restrictions from government in terms of number of frequency, and also that willingness and ability to travel. But what this has allowed us to do, if you like, is somewhat refocus our business as to not just a strong domestic market, but look at other opportunities. And we've sort of taken two main steps. One is this refitting of a 767 into a cargo aircraft, semi-freighter. There wasn't a great need at the time for a 767 to be sitting on the apron, so that was refitted and certainly serviced the movement of freight between Asia, mainly China, but also India, into Kazakhstan and into the CIS region. So that really, in light of belly capacity being much lower than usual, with scheduled services not being operated. And the second main refocus, if you like, was that we've pivoted to leisure. International travelers haven't been necessarily coming in and out of Kazakhstan with visa restrictions, with just a general hesitancy to travel. But our local market in Kazakhstan has wanted to go, to take a leisure trip. So, whereas previously we'd operated many business SME type markets, we've pivoted this around and really, operating Antalya year round, or Matala in Sri Lanka under charter, or the Maldives, a new route which we go to 6 times a week next week, Sharm el Sheikh and Hurghada in Egypt, has really been a repivoting of a local market which can travel to certain key markets, rather than foreign travellers coming in and out of Kazakhstan. And it's sort of really coincided, if you like, a little bit with this, what I guess we're titling lifestyle brand. Many people can now work anywhere they want in the world. And certainly we've seen people teaching their kids remotely from the Maldives or from Dubai or from Antalya or other parts of the world, as you like. And it's coincided with the redelivery or delivery of our new A321LRs, replacing the 757s, and has put us in a reasonable position going forward. I think there's one inevitable sort of outcome, if you like, impact going forward, and this is the probably the need of an IATA Travel Pass, this or similar type product, an app where passengers will be able to check their travel eligibility or their health requirements and be able to do it sort of in a touchless environment where they control the data. But I think Singapore Airlines announced this week that they're trialing this on Singapore London in the next couple of weeks, and I think it's inevitable over the next couple of years. This is going to be a lasting impact of this COVID period we've been in. So really, that's all my thoughts squeezed into 5 minutes.
Well, thanks a lot, Richard. You certainly covered everything that I was hoping you would cover in a very short period of time. And there's a lot going on in this industry right now, and a lot of different segments of the market. And Ariston, of course, is in many segments. So it's great to have your participation. And please hold on in case there's any questions later. We're going to have the other few airlines here share, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience for any of the airlines. So just hang on for now. The second airline is CAREC from Afghanistan. It's a private airline based in Afghanistan. And we have Habib Frogai, head of business intelligence and airline partnership. And Afghanistan it's a very unique market, and I'm sure that's proven again to be the case during COVID. And Habib is willing to share his experience there, which is going to be quite interesting, I think. So if you can, Habib, can go ahead and talk about what CAREC has been doing during this crisis and repositioning itself.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, Afghanistan is a unique market for airlines, and possibly we can say that CAREC is one of the private airlines in this country, along with governmental airlines, And coming back to the COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus disease has had a devastating impact on the aviation industry globally, as nearly whole travel came to a standstill in late March and April 2020, and Comair was not an exception. It was also badly affected as virtually all scheduled international flights were suspended. Also, civil aviation authorities implemented bans on domestic air travels, and in order to avoid the spread of COVID-19. In that time, we really confronted huge loss, as well as many new cultures for the airline, which was unique actually, and which we hadn't experienced ever before. First of all, drop off the number of passengers in international restrictions on visas from other sides. We were really experiencing a tough situation. I mean, a large number of staff members was getting home to work from home or distance working, which was a new experience for our airline. And that time we actually canceled 90% of our international flights, and we were only operating a few number of domestic sectors. Our aircrafts, Airbus, I mean, it was all grounded. Domestic tourism in our country was not very good from ever before because of security reasons, but we were all considering the international flights. That was also a big problem in that time, since the religious passengers, that was our main target, was quite down, because our flights to Saudi Arabia was down in that time. And later on, I mean, in the first few months, the number of passengers in our domestic flights was all in all in good shape. But later on, since the pandemic outbreak was getting higher, so our domestic flights also came to an halt, and we were really facing a big challenge, as well as a big financial crisis. Some of the other aviation sectors was supposed to get support from the government, but since the Comair was a private airline, so the government support was also limited, and all in all, we were expecting to get a support, as it was also announced by IATA, to support the aviation sectors, but the subsidies or support from the government was also limited for our airline. On the other hand, technical support was also another challenge that we faced with, since no flights was operated. So technical support, receiving spare parts and everything, was also came to an standstill later on. But after September 2020, we, after doing an analysis and making a new business plan, we came to a decision to start some bubble projects, especially we did with India, and restarted the international flights back to Istanbul. And we were also conducting some cargo flights that at least it covered some of the extra expenses. And all in all, on 2021, we are coming back to at least a normal point and getting back our loads gradually. But it's still the financial crisis insisting. I mean, the interest rates for bank loans is still higher, and we were expecting Asia Development Bank to have a support in this part, but that's also not predictable at this time. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Habib, and quite an interesting the market Afghanistan has been, and it's I think it's recovered faster than some other markets actually because of the type of traffic that Afghanistan has: less tourism, more worker traffic, more ethnic traffic, religious traffic, more domestic traffic, but still a very challenging market for a very challenging environment for every country. There's no escaping the challenges that this crisis has brought the airline industry. Next, I'm going to ask Miat Mongolian Airlines and Batdari, who heads up business planning for Miat. Miat is a government-owned flag carrier, and they operate mainly internationally. So it's the impact obviously is quite severe, not having a domestic operation, and but Miat has, like other airlines, been able to pivot into cargo and some other things. So Batdari, can you please talk about what Miat has been doing and adjusting to this crisis and what the impact has been so far?
Hello, Brandon, and everyone else. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, it's been quite a disastrous year for us as well. Like as Brandon mentioned, that you know, we are a very small carrier, but almost 90% of our flight network is consisted of international routes. So yeah, we are one of the biggest hit airlines by the COVID-19, and also we were hit by it very early because China is a very big destination for us, and we shut down China in late January, and we shut down all of the international network mid-March 2020. So yeah, we've been hit by the pandemic enormously. Luckily enough, you know, like the last 3 years from 2017 to 2019 has been a good year. Has been good years for us. So we had some financial reserve to withstand a couple of months. But yeah, it's been very difficult, and yeah, ever since we shut down all of the international routes, we've been pretty much delaying the outflow of the cash by you know, by cutting the costs, and also we have one domestic route which we fly to Uyutolba mine, one of the biggest copper mines in the world, and we have twice daily flights over there. So that has been a big, one of the biggest, well, the lifeline for us. And also the government mainly granted us with the repatriation flights. So that's been a big help for us. Even though we are 100% state-owned, we haven't received any cash grants from the government. And so yeah, we have survived for exactly 1 year now since we shut down our international routes. And yeah, it's been a tough year for us. And but we also found, like Air Astana mentioned, we converted 2 of our 767-300s to cargo, and we've been carrying the COVID-19 relief goods and also general cargo in between China and Europe. And also, yeah, and also we did some flights, repatriation flights to destinations where we never used to fly before the COVID-19. We did some repatriation flights all over the world, from the States, from Australia, and from other places. So it's been an interesting year, very tough year, but a very interesting year for us. International traffic was down about more than 80% for us. Well, this is we operate in January and February, so yeah, the international traffic was more than 80% down in 2020, and we also an airline with a very seasonal pattern, so we carry most of our passengers in the summer. So you know, it's been a tough summer for us. Yeah, it's and we, as I mentioned, we are a very small airline. We used to have 7 aircraft in 2019, and now we have five aircraft. So that's been a help on the cost side for us. So,
just
yeah.
just with the outlook for this year, I mean, it's Kazakhstan and Afghanistan have had, the international market has partially reopened there. Obviously, it's still a long way to go, but it's Mongolia hasn't reopened at all yet, and you might, I don't know, it doesn't look that optimistic, I think, for this summer 2021. What are you expecting in terms of reopening international at this point, and what kind of impact will there be this year, you think?
Yeah, right now the government is doing some research, and the government has just announced that they will open the borders beginning May 1st. But I'm not really optimistic into that, because I believe that the quarantine regime will still stand, and because of the hotel availability in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, it's been difficult to bring in many people to Mongolia. So yeah, I think the summer is pretty much lost for us as well. The government is the vaccine rollout has been quite slow. We just started about 2 weeks ago with the vaccination, and so it's the vaccination rate is quite slow, and I think that personally I think that it's going to take the whole summer to get all the majority of population to get vaccinated. So yeah. I think the summer of 2021 is a lost summer for us as well. I am pretty optimistic that the traffic will resume somewhat beginning from September, and especially with Mongolians trapped for so long. I do believe that the outbound travel will be good during fall and winter. So yeah. That's the only optimism.
I think a lot of people are hoping to get out of their countries that they've been trapped in, and I think Aristona's experience with, for example, Sri Lanka and Maldives and Turkey and Egypt shows that there is that demand once it opens up for outbound to even launch new routes, and I'm sure Miat will eventually benefit from that. Thanks so much, Badari, for sharing. It's very interesting to see the experiences of three very different countries and markets. Last, I've asked Shalva Kiknadze from GeoSky and the Cargo Airlines, TCA. He's the CEO of both these airlines, GeoSky and TCA, which are freighter operators operating 747s out of Georgia. And the experience obviously is very different on the cargo side, and I thought it would be good for a cargo airline to share their experience, just because it's such a different story, obviously, on cargo, and a lot of opportunities there. So, Shalva, can you please just share what you've been, what GeoSky and TCA has been up to and benefiting from during the pandemic?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, hello. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for inviting me on this meeting. First of all, it's really very sad to hear about the passenger airlines, what is happening around the world. Regarding the cargo airlines, as you all know, so for us, it's a really, really good period, how to say. So first of all, let me just introduce our airline. TCA was established on 2012, and we have started operated on 747, two of them, 200s, and Geosky was established on 2017, and we are continuing 747 cargo operation. Same time we have a business jet, Hawker 800 plus 4 helicopters, Augusta type. So we have many different businesses. Let's say in our holding, we have fully 5 companies, including maintenance, cargo, handling companies, and 2020 years for us was very increasing year. So our flights for cargo operation was increased around 60%. In 2020, we passed CCR 129 authorization. The Geosky is the first Georgian cargo airline who was designated as a regular cargo operator. And we are flying 3 times per week from CGO, China to Tbilisi, and from Tbilisi to Frankfurt Airport. And we are carrying all kinds of cargo. And during the 2020 summer period, when everything was shutting down, our airline was working every day, and we was carrying medical cargo to around the Europe, almost in every European country from China. What else? So for today, all the cargo operations still are in a very high requests, and we are receiving daily around 20 to 30 requests for cargo operation, for cargo charters. Our main problem is it's very hard to find any cargo aircraft for purchase or for lease, or because these aircrafts which we are operating, it's not enough for the requests around the world what we are receiving. So we are already looking for another 747s for even dry lease or purchase on any kind of agreement, but there is a really, really serious issue with that.
Yeah, I think that's an issue around the world now, and of course that's why you see a lot of use of.
Yeah, because you see when you have some already ready contracts to operate next 2-3 years. In these cases, maybe cost not very important, because I'm really serious. The cargo operation increased. It never was this kind of level. It was in 2020, and now in 2021, it's a little more reduced, but it's still. I'm saying we are receiving during the from 20 to 30 requests for charter flights, or for some long-term contracts for ACMI, dry lease, the different requests we are receiving. We understand it can be continue for long, this kind of operation, when we are really wish to have passenger aircrafts to start flying around the world, because as you understand, it's around maybe 40-50% of cargo was carrying before by the cargo apartments of passenger aircraft, and that when the passenger aircraft was grounded due to the COVID situation, that why was increased this cargo aircraft operation. And I don't know what will be next, but really hoping everything will be calm down, and everything will come back in the regular operation. I mean, the passenger aircrafts. and we are ready to support every country, every airline, if we can, to do it somehow.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Shalva. And we all hope that everything's back to normal. And I think there'll be opportunities for cargo even once passengers back to normal, both for passenger airlines and cargo airlines throughout CAREC. And there are several cargo airlines in CAREC, as well as several passenger airlines carrying cargo, as we heard from Miat and Air Astana and Comair, all three of them actually operating passenger aircraft as cargo aircraft carrying cargo or passenger aircraft freighters, as some people in the industry like to refer to them. And Simon later on will have a presentation looking at cargo and some of the opportunities in cargo. So it's great that we had some thoughts there on cargo from all four of the airlines, and I'd like to thank all four for sharing, and I hope to continue this dialogue in the future as we talk about recovery from the pandemic and work as a bloc countries and as a program to facilitate that recovery. As long as there's no questions for the airline speakers.
I didn't see any, Brendan, so I guess we
I
can.
will go start my presentation then, and then Simon will go through his presentation. Again, anybody in the audience who has questions for anyone, any of us or any of the airlines, this webinar will be going on for another 50 minutes or so. So there's plenty of time to start asking questions. We certainly encourage the questions. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, is it showing okay? I guess that's yes.
It's fine.
So I'm just giving a quick presentation now on low-cost carriers, as was mentioned at the beginning, and then Simon will be giving a presentation on cargo. So we've identified these as just two opportunities, two areas of where there's a lot of potential within the CAREC region for growth now and well into the future. And and a CAREC aviation program actually is now looking at studying these in further. So this is just kind of a taste of what might come later on. We appreciate any feedback you might have in both these areas. The low-cost carriers, some of you might be more familiar with LCCs than others, but the general model is that you keep your costs down by having all economy aircraft, so no business class. You operate point to point rather than as a hub or network. When you charge only for you unbundle your fares, which means when you buy a fare, it only includes the seat. If you want extras like food or carry a bag, you have to pay extra. And airlines, LCCs also generally utilize their aircraft more than, say, a full service airline. So that's another way to keep the cost down. So that's the general idea of a low-cost carrier. Over the years, it's adjusted somewhat, and there's a lot of airlines out there that are now what are referred to as hybrid airlines. So they might actually be operate like a network or have a business class, even though they started as an LCC. While a lot of them, like Ryanair, for example, is still very much a very pure LCC. And LCCs are important because as history has shown in the last 30 years, they've completely changed markets and have stimulated demand and led to much faster growth in all parts of the world. LCC started in North America in the 1980s with Southwest. Then they spread to Europe with EasyJet and Ryanair being the first ones there. Then since the turn of the century, since 2000, there's been a proliferation in Asia Pacific. Southeast Asia in particular has had a lot of LCC growth in the last 20 years. And there's also been some LCC growth in places like Latin America and the Middle East and South Asia. But for Southeast Asia, for Central Asia, it's just really just starting, and that's kind of the point of this presentation. As you remember from the first two webinars, we have an ability to have some polling and quizzes, and I'm just curious how many people in the audience what do they think about the number of low-cost carriers in CAREC, excluding China. China is excluded in this presentation, as they were in some of the other things we were looking at earlier, because it's a big market and it's much bigger than CAREC and has a much, its characteristics are quite different. So in this case, we're just talking about the 10 Central Asian countries. I say low-cost carriers and low-cost divisions. I'll kind of specify that a bit later, but a low-cost division basically is an airline that uses the operator certificate of their parents. So it could be, so they might not have their own operating certificate, but it's a separate brand under that, while a low-cost carrier has its own certificate. So if you could just show the results now to see where the audience thought there was. So quite split. Some people thought there was only 2. The actual correct answer is 5, which only 18% to guess right. I guess it just shows you people are not even aware of the low-cost carriers necessarily in the region. The reason is they're very small. That some of them are new, and also you know, the definition is not always clear. So a lot of people don't know what a low-cost carrier really is necessarily. So the 5 in the CAREC zone, you know, excluding China again, is Air Blue from Pakistan, which is the earliest one, and then Air Manas from Kyrgyz, which for a while was partly owned by Pegasus, which is a major low-cost carrier in Turkey. Buta Airways and Fly Aristan are 2 examples of low-cost divisions, in that Buta Airways still flies under the operating certificate of Azal, and Fly Aristan, for now at least, uses the operating certificate of Air Astana. So they're technically low-cost divisions rather than low-cost carriers, but pretty much, you know, there's not much of a distinction otherwise. And Isnis, another more recent one from Mongolia, and still very small. As you can see, all these are small, 10 aircraft or less. The number of destinations is pretty limited. Fly Aristan has very quickly become the largest one in terms of destinations, and will soon become the largest in terms of aircraft as well, as they've expanded very rapidly since launching in mid-2019, while the others are still quite small. And this really kind of sums it up. Just, you know, what the opportunity is. It's just the market share for LCCs is just so much lower in CAREC than it is around the world. So globally, the average is 30%. CAREC is 15%. And you have some regions like Southeast Asia or ASEAN, where it's just like 50%. So much higher than the average. And CAREC really, ideally, should be closer to the global average. Some would argue maybe even the potential to become higher than the global average, given that a lot of the market is short haul, is regional and domestic, you know, or with a narrow body range. So there's a lot of opportunity in CAREC. I should point out that 15% includes both foreign low-cost carriers and the 5 LCCs we just were talking about. The 5 LCCs we were just talking about obviously are very small, so it's a very small percentage of the share. So actually, even if you look at the 15%, most of that is foreign LCCs, which just shows there's a lot of opportunity for, I would say, local homegrown LCCs in the CAREC region. And this shows the breakdown by country, by those 10 countries, again, excluding China. Georgia has the highest share of LCCs. This is based on 2019 data, so before the pandemic. 30% is Georgia's LCC market share, and then Azerbaijan is second most. That's mainly because of Buta Airways. Afghanistan, interestingly, has a high proportion that's mainly driven by some carriers from the Middle East and India that are low cost that operate into Afghanistan. And Pakistan, driven somewhat by Air Blue, but also by a lot of airlines, again, from Middle East, low-cost carriers from the Middle East operating into Pakistan. And some of the other countries here are very, very low, you know, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. Some of these only have like 1 or 2 foreign LCCs, and there's so a very, very small percentage of the overall market. So some of those countries really have quite a lot of LCC opportunity, I would say. So again, just pointed out about Georgia. It's the only LCC in CAREC, or only country in CAREC, I should say, that's near the global average. Kazakhstan, in the last chart was down at 8-9%, but it's been growing very fast because of Fly Aristan. If you look back at 2018, Kazakhstan was only 2% LCC. That became 8-9% in 2019, and during the pandemic year, it became much higher, and will continue to become much higher as Fly Aristan grows and potentially other LCCs compete in that market as well. Again, 5 LCCs only in the total region, but a lot of foreign LCCs. There's actually 11 foreign LCCs, and I'll have that list a bit later. In terms of the local LCCs, I should say that not only are they very small, but they're very focused either on domestic markets or international outside of CAREC. So if you look at like Buta Airways, for example, it's mainly flying outside of CAREC to the Middle East and Russia, while Fly Aristan is mainly domestic, has one international destination that actually they're launching later this month. And in terms of international routes to other CAREC countries, there's only 2, based on the pre-COVID network, which is Buta Airways services to Batumi and Tbilisi. So there's a lot of opportunity for low-cost carriers to fly regionally. When you look at what low-cost carriers generally penetrate first, it's the regional market, the short-haul international market, as well as the domestic market. And for example, here in Southeast Asia, where I'm based, LCCs have really proliferated the regional international market within the 10 ASEAN countries, to the point that they have 60% of the market in terms of flying between those 10 countries. And I think for CAREC, there's a lot of opportunity to build up from what is now 1%, just 2 routes, even less than 1%, to not maybe 60%, but certainly a lot higher than it has been in the last few years. And these are the 11 foreign LCCs, just to give you a quick snapshot of that. Some of these, I should say, I was talking earlier about airlines that are more like hybrid airlines rather than LCCs. They're still categorized as LCCs by aviation data providers and other publications and so forth. But some of them have kind of migrated away from the pure LCC model. Flydubai is a good example of more of a hybrid airline these days. So they have business class. They connect with Emirates. They're more of a network airline, and they are, in fact, the largest "quote unquote" LCC in CAREC. They fly to every country except for Mongolia, and they have the most capacity before COVID, and also even now today during the pandemic. They are the largest LCC in the region. Air Arabia is also quite large, flying to 7 countries. Wizz Air is the 3rd largest. They only fly to 2 countries, in Georgia and I believe Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan. But because they have a base in Georgia at Kutaisi Airport, they're actually the 3rd largest. But they're mainly operating from Georgia to Europe. And Pegasus is the 4th largest, as I mentioned previously. Pegasus had a stake in Air Manus until 2019. And then you have several other smaller ones. Ryanair, of course, is a big name. They just started flying to Georgia in 2019, so are still pretty small. And all those others, as you see, only serve 1 country. So really, it's those top 4 that are really make up most of the foreign LCCs in the region. And foreign LCCs are important because they provide competition, obviously, but they also provide a potential opportunity in the local market through either JVs or bases. So I was just mentioning Wizz has a base in Kutaisi in Georgia, but in the future we could see other bases from the likes of Wizz or Ryanair or Air Arabia and Pegasus. These leading LCCs from Europe and from the Middle East, not only are they very eager to expand in Central Asia, they're also keen to look at opportunities for JVs and new bases. So a JV would be establishing a partnership with another company or another airline based in the local country. In fact, Air Arabia has just done that in the UAE, opening a base and a JV in Abu Dhabi. That's just one example. So there's several potential examples out there of JVs in other countries or in other regions, but there is no example in CAREC except for the previous example of Pegasus and being involved in air manas from Kurds. But in the future, that's an opportunity. The other opportunity would be using the existing LCCs in the region. For example, Fly Aristan could become a platform for establishing JVs and bases in other countries. Given their success in Kazakhstan, and I believe they would be interested in establishing themselves in other countries using a similar model to say Wiz or Air Arabia, or which has bases in several countries actually outside the UAE, as well as somebody like Air Asia, for example, has bases in 5 countries or JVs in 5 countries. So there's a lot of opportunity there. To work with the foreign LCCs or to just work with some of the LCCs that have already been established. The key here is scale. So by establishing these JVs, you help build scale. A lot of the Central Asian markets individually are very small, so it's hard to maybe have a sustainable low-cost carrier. But if you're partnering with or are part of a larger group, then you enjoy all the efficiencies of a larger fleet and common purchasing for things like maintenance, and that helps keep the cost down and helps make the model viable. And so a lot of countries could take advantage of this kind of opportunity. Specifically mentioned Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan was planning to launch an LCC in the last couple of years, and I think it's been delayed now by the pandemic, but certainly it's an opportunity. It could either be under Uzbekistan Airways, which has been looking at an LCC subsidiary, or a private airline in Uzbekistan. It's certainly, given the size of that market and the growth opportunity, that's a market that certainly would be right for LCCs. But that's just one example. I would say almost every country or every country in CAREC would have LCC growth opportunities in the future, and I think we'll see a lot of development in this area. Richard, of course, talked about Fly Aristan briefly during when he was talking, but I want to just illustrate this as an example because they've been in business less than 2 years, but have been expanding even during COVID. They've slowed their expansion a little bit, but are still expanding. Carrying 1.5 million passengers even in 2020, despite the pandemic. They're projecting 3 million this year. Their fleet's going to grow from 7 to 10 this year. They already added their 8th aircraft. And the fares have been very low, which has stimulated demand and has led to growth in the domestic market in Kazakhstan, even during the pandemic. And they are launching 6 new routes just in the next several weeks for a total of 35, including 1 international being Istanbul. And mostly, a lot of the routes are not trunk routes, but they're actually brand new routes, including the international route. But a lot of their domestic routes are new point-to-point routes, so routes that haven't been served before. Not between 2 major cities, but between 2 secondary cities. And that's what LCCs do around the world. They are able to stimulate and open up these routes that nobody else can open up. And that's what's happening in Kazakhstan, and that's what can happen in other countries in CAREC once more LCCs are established. So following that example. And I have an airport example here, Kutaisi in Georgia. Again, I was mentioning Wizz Air having a base there, and that's resulted in very rapid growth. The airport actually only opened in 2012, and then the base Wizz Air started flying there, and soon after the airport opened the base there a few years later, resulting in that very rapid growth from 2017, 2018, and 2019. That was all driven by Wizz, which accounts for most of the market at Kutaisi. But that's the only low-cost airport in CAREC. But another, Kutaisi, if you're not familiar with, is a smaller city, but it's sandwiched kind of halfway between Batumi and Tbilisi in the middle of the country. So it's very well positioned to generate traffic from anywhere with low fares, because people are able to take the train there or drive there in a couple of hours from most of Georgia. And by positioning themselves as a low-cost airport, they've been able to attract Wizz Air and other low-cost carriers, more recently Ryanair as well. So there's an opportunity for other airports in the CAREC to also, I think, follow that example and to help stimulate the market and bring more LCCs into the region. So, I mean, the reasons for LCCs are very clear. It helps tourism, helps domestic growth, helps international, helps a lot of the stuff we were talking about in the last two webinars. And the opportunity is very obvious given the small share of the market for LCCs in CAREC so far compared to the global averages. But there are impediments and challenges. High airport costs. Kutaisi has very low airport costs as an LCC airport, but generally speaking, CAREC airports are very expensive to operate from, and there's high taxes, especially internationally. So that makes it more difficult because if you know, you might have a cheap $20 fare, but if you have $100 in taxes, it's hard to hard to really stimulate demand because your total price of the ticket is not $40, but it's $120 because of the high taxes. And if there's high airport costs, then it's hard for LCCs to actually offer that $20 fare. So the environment, there needs to be some changes in the regulatory environment as well to help support this and make it possible. Just a quick last question. As I mentioned, we're looking at studying further LCCs as part of the CAREC Aviation program. And just a quick question whether the audience thinks this is a good idea, whether we should be studying this further. This is just a presentation, but we could be looking at this in much more detail. Okay, if we can show the results. Well, 100%. So that sounds pretty obvious. So we're happy to see that, and I hope to maybe present later on in a few months' time more about LCCs. So thank you so much, and I'm going to now hand it over to Simon, who's going to talk about cargo, which is another great opportunity area for the CAREC region.
Great, thanks, Brendan. Just get my screen up here. Okay. So the discussion here is about the cargo market for CAREC, and I'll move quite quickly through the slides and happy to take questions afterwards. When we did a study for the ADB on the CAREC region in 2017, 2018, cargo was significant in some countries such as Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. And in terms of the bilaterals, usually with a passenger bilateral, there's a cargo component. So intra-CAREC, there were a good progress being made on the bilaterals. What would you normally expect for an economic region like CAREC is that everybody is connected with an agreement, or there's a multilateral. So that's passenger and cargo. And certainly that's an opportunity moving forward. For CAREC interregional flights, and connectivity is one of the key issues moving forward for the CAREC region. Passenger flights back in February 2019 within CAREC. And so a lot of major cities are not well connected. And so the learnings out of this is in terms of the schedules are not frequent, they're not regular enough, and weren't, and that's an opportunity. And there's a potential to increase connectivity for both passenger and cargo. So where a lot of the growth markets have come from, and we'll look at e-commerce shortly, but secondary city to secondary city allows large freighter aircraft to come to major airports or major hubs, and traffic and passengers and cargo to go to secondary cities, especially if it's high value product, high demand, high speed product, the Amazon type product and e-commerce. Those are the kinds of high value consignments and parcels that benefit from good connectivity with secondary cities. So in terms of how ready is CAREC to handle increased volumes, in 2020, even with COVID, 2 billion people shopped online. And so COVID actually caused a jump in e-commerce sales. And as our airline colleagues have spoken, particularly from the cargo side, with CAMAir and Air Astana and Mongolia as well, MIA, there's great opportunity on the cargo side currently. And so e-commerce rose 18%, cargo was 36% of airline benefits in 2020. And airlines are leading the transformation of e-commerce. Some of them are dedicated freighter airlines, and as we've heard today already, belly space in passenger aircraft was around 40 or 50%. Almost half of the traffic carried by air for cargo was carried in passenger aircraft until COVID hit. This chart here shows that back in January 2020, passenger aircraft dropped off, the line on the bottom there. Wide body passenger belly shot down significantly. Total capacity was down, but it was supported by dedicated freighter capacity. So there's been a massive swing in dedicated freighters, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is freighters are able to carry large volumes, often to destinations that don't support passenger traffic in huge volumes. Again, 747 freighter capacity is doing very well for cargo, but those destinations may not be 747 or 777 wide body or A330 wide body destinations. Some are. So understanding the flows of cargo versus the flows of passenger is very, very important moving forward. In terms of freighter volume, so the freighter volume in blue, 20% growth year on year, or compared month on month compared to the last year. Passenger in the red has dropped significantly. So the pandemic is limiting the operation of passenger flights, how easy it is, borders and restrictions and quarantine and lockdowns. So freighter transportation is likely to remain high until the recovery of all the passenger flights. And that may be, again, anyone's guess, but it could be 2022, 23, 24, depending on the travel pass, the global initiatives of border cooperation, the World Health Organization, a lot of global bodies that are actively working with ICAO and IATA as well on how to get the world traveling again. So the challenge is the lack of capacity, and that's limiting faster air cargo recovery. A shortage of freighter aircraft, a shortage of available aircraft to either dry lease or to purchase, or even ACMI. So in terms of the world air cargo markets, the drive is likely to continue. Cargo routes are not typically the ones served by passenger belly aircraft. So there's seasonality issues. There's also different flows of cargo. Often cargo can flow out or flow in, but not necessarily in the same direction. A lot of cargo sometimes goes in a circular motion out to major cities in Asia, picks up different cargo, comes back a different way. Cargo aircraft obviously carry hazardous goods or temperature controlled freight, which is usually perishable products such as fruit and vegetables, meats, etc. Perishable product. Payload restrictions and limited volume on passenger flights, that's where cargo aircraft can provide a solution. And so passenger schedules historically are typically not compatible with air freight needs. Often air freight shipments, they must go on a Tuesday. They can't wait till a Saturday if it's flowers or fruit and vegetables or fresh produce of some description, or very time sensitive cargo. It has to move on a specific date or time. The other interesting feature of the demand for cargo is air cargo prices have risen with the pandemic. And so somewhere around about $2 to $3 in terms of either east-west air freight or the load factors. The load factors have gone up significantly, but the cargo rate value has almost tripled from around $2.50 to over $6, sometimes a little bit more than that on average. That's east-west traffic. And so that's a significant incentive to the cargo market. Online trade is really the growth driver, online commerce, etc. So yields have gone up even with constrained supply. So if there's a reduced supply, it naturally pushes upwards the price because of the demand. People will pay more. And so according to IATA, air freight is desperately needed to refill inventories. Again, we've talked about medical shipments that are moving. They're very time sensitive. They're crucial shipments to move quickly. And equally with inventory. So as the world's inventories reduce, refilling them is something that cargo aircraft can do. And the CAREC region is a huge region with a lot of travel by air distance. And so being able to cross the CAREC region, move freight efficiently, is an economic enabler as well as an opportunity for the cargo market. One other feature is, again, the shift from passenger aircraft into cargo freighters. So Boeing, just one example, Airbus has very similar statistics, but there's a significant shift now in the current outlook in terms of what's needed for freighters. Boeing's talking about another 2,500 freighters over the next 20 years. It's not only the new build, brand new Boeing aircraft or A330 freighters for Airbus, but also the passenger to freight conversions. And that's predicted to be around about 1,500 passenger to freight conversions, whether it's 767 passenger aircraft going to 737 freighters or 777s. The 787 on the Boeing side is a very good cargo aircraft, even with no passengers. And a lot of the traffic around the world that's moving by air for cargo, a lot of it's traveling on 787s for long haul. And obviously Airbus with its A350s doing similar things. But the interesting development here is that short haul routes and domestic, and given the size of CAREC, moving consignments across CAREC or joining up to a hub, those are often very significant distances. And there's an opportunity potentially for the region where looking at how could traffic move on narrow body aircraft such as a 737. Again, Boeing's reporting that there's an increase in orders for 737-800 freighters for passenger to cargo. So there's quite a shift going on. That's likely to last for some time. And so one of the questions today is, how long will the cargo demand for freighters continue? So the global economy is boosting cargo, but not air travel. And so over late 2020 into 2021, passenger demand is slowly starting to increase. And again, different predictions talk about maybe 2, 3, 4 years out for passenger. But global industrial production on the blue line there, that's starting to recover. And that relates to shipments, e-commerce, etc., online retail. Those are the parts of the market that may be significant opportunities, particularly for CAREC, a very large population collectively, a lot of opportunity potentially for transit cargo. Cargo historically and from a transit perspective is an opportunity as well. So cargo doesn't necessarily go non-stop for long haul distances. There are opportunities to drop off and pick up cargo at various intermediate points. So just a couple of questions for today, and we'll get the survey up in a moment. What would be the impact if extra freighter capacity could be provided for the CAREC region? And is cargo beneficial for CAREC exports and imports? So as a country opportunity and a regional opportunity, what's the import and export opportunity? Can cargo benefit the region? And can cooperation between CAREC transport hubs, so working with other countries in the CAREC region cooperating, can that also promote economic growth? So just on the survey here, you'll see that it just goes down below what you can see on the page. So appreciate if you could just move your screen down to answer those as well. Just give you a minute to do that. So just while that's happening, again, one of the key questions for all of us today is, how long will this continue? Is it another 1 or 2 years, or is it another 3 or 4 years? Has the world changed significantly and we are now in a permanent shift where e-commerce has become the norm? People are at home ordering products and things online. that's the way the world was going. COVID seems to have increased that significantly, but there'll always be demand for fresh produce and perishable products as much as mechanical and engineering products to come in to supply inventories. Okay, I wonder if we could just, it's about 40% through, so maybe just a few more minutes. So the connectivity within CAREC is going to be crucial for the recovery. Previously on the webinars, we've talked about passenger connectivity. And as I mentioned before, the cargo network operates often quite different underneath. It's almost like a current in a river. It's operating at a different level often than the cargo. Belly space is a very good opportunity for large passenger aircraft and even some narrow bodies. But even as that recovers, some of the destinations or the time sensitivity of cargo means that there's new opportunities for freighters or ongoing opportunity for freighters. So in terms of the impact, most thought it was a significant impact in terms of the value for the CAREC region, extra freighter capacity. Yes, air cargo is beneficial to CAREC. Certainly it's the view that everybody held, 85%. And can cooperation between CAREC regions, transport hubs promote economic growth? Fairly close. So some opportunity, and the majority thought a lot. So thank you for those responses. Just moving through the last few slides today. In terms of supply chain is crucial to cargo. If a large wide-body freighter arrives at an airport and there aren't the logistics and the both government and private coordination, whether that's paperless e-freight systems for logistics, fast transit and arrival of cargo. Earlier studies have shown that there's, I think, be up to 30 paper documents historically in terms of cargo coming into the CAREC region. E-freight and paperless clearly speeds up cargo from a customs perspective as well as an airway bill processing point of view. So quarantine exemptions are important for flight crews coming through, fast turnaround of aircraft. Quarantine may be with us for quite some time to come. And so the resourcing and facilities to speedily process inbound cargo and transit cargo, that's when the private sector can work with government. And certainly, as we've heard today from the airlines today, there may be no cash support for airlines, but certainly in the CAREC region, investors will come if there's an opportunity to grow a cargo business. And that includes the facilities and the processing capability and the whole supply chain that supports air cargo efficiently. Global standards are important. Again, we've talked briefly about health, border safety today. That's very, very important, both for products and in the future for passengers. So a coordinated infrastructure is vital for maintaining air cargo routes. Some examples that we looked at in terms of what IATA was describing happened in the industry. As passenger operations stopped at many airports, the airport stopped functioning for all-weather operations or cancellations. So the alternates for cargo aircraft in some cases reduced. And certainly, I haven't got any exact data on CAREC currently, but I believe that some airports would have not been functioning fully. And therefore, if there was a need for a diversion of a cargo aircraft for weather, it presents a further challenge. And that's where a collaborative, coordinated response is very important for again, a crucial region like CAREC. So a coordinated effort across CAREC by the governments helps to understand what the cargo flows are and which countries are bringing transit cargo in or else taking import-export cargo in and out of CAREC. The opportunity here again is e-commerce for the top 100 airports. I looked through IATA's statistics, the e-airway bills, and I couldn't see any CAREC airports in the top 100. Now, these are some very big airports with well-established cargo operations. There may be a change in the statistics, as we've heard today, as freighter aircraft grow in the CAREC region, but it's an opportunity. So promoting the transshipment of cargo via CAREC and the import and export of goods is a real opportunity for the region. Again, in terms of the liberalization of the air cargo market, online purchasing and same-day shipments, they've significantly increased. And so airports and regions that adopt modern paperless systems, that creates competitive advantage, certainly for the country, but also if it's working with other countries, particularly in the CAREC region. So understanding where profitable air cargo hubs could be that can work together helps, again, a region build on its synergies and its capabilities. So CAREC certainly can assist in the penetration of paperless e-cargo systems. That's a key enabler of infrastructure for the likes of air cargo. Transit cargo is very important in terms of fast, efficient processing. Again, as many will know on the call today, that it's about speed. So if you have high value, expedited, fast products coming in and out, high value products, cross-border controls and efficiency is vital for operations. So modernizing the whole purchase tracking and receipt of air cargo shipments, airway bills across national borders. If something comes into one country and moves on a smaller aircraft to another country, how is that facilitated? What's required from a government perspective in terms of customs clearance and transshipment, either within a region between a couple of countries or across the whole of CAREC? And there's, again, an illustrative slide here, but this sort of suggests that there can be strategic hubs that support the efficient transfer of air cargo. There's already activity going on. Again, we've heard from airlines today, but it's also where what are the future opportunities? How could air transport be coordinated across CAREC to improve the reach, particularly for e-commerce and online shopping and urgent parts to move through the region? An example here in Saudi Arabia, Dammam Airport, an airport I'm familiar with, they have established a cargo village before COVID, and it's where it was a multimodal cargo village. So it was a air logistics hub, and it was competing with some of the largest cargo airports in the world in terms of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, etc., as well as within the country. So Jeddah on the east coast, west coast of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh in the center, the capital, and Dammam on the east coast. A lot of cargo coming in and out of Saudi Arabia. It's a huge country. There's some similarities with Central Asia, the CAREC region, that if the infrastructure is good and efficient, it starts to attract airlines and it starts to attract investment. And that's really probably one of the takeaways out of today, that if the air cargo market is supported in its current growth phase, which may last for another 1, 2, 3, 4 years as passenger starts to recover, road and rail links actually complement a multimodal mix between air and maritime in some cases, with Caspian Sea, Black Sea, etc., those other areas, and even some of the larger lake regions within Central Asia. There's some opportunities to move freight and cargo, particularly perishable goods, time-sensitive goods. So air connectivity is higher price usually, but it relates to higher speed. So understanding the potential for the region means it can attract new investment into strategic logistics hubs and support infrastructure. And so a brief overview today. Thank you very much for your time, and welcome any questions as we move forward. Certainly we have some polling questions shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon, for that presentation on cargo. Very interesting, and I think the case from GeoSky and TCA also illustrates, if I understood correctly what the presentation said, where cargo was coming in from China and then moving on to countries in Europe. I guess that was the location was a benefit in terms of cargo market. We don't have that many questions. I think you guys did such a great presentation that everybody is fully informed at present. So perhaps we can move forward a little bit with the polling questions that were prepared, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have some polling questions, and then after that we can discuss the questions and also about the CAREC Aviation program. So this time the questions are very much geared at helping us get feedback about the webinar series and about the future development of CAREC Aviation program. So there are 6 questions here, so we'll give everybody a few minutes to reply, and you do need to scroll down to make sure you answer all 6 of the questions. So again, they focus on what you thought about the series of webinars, and what you would like in terms of another webinar series, but the possible frequency of future webinars, and whether future webinars could be specific to individual countries or to all countries. So this series of 3 webinars was, of course, a CAREC-wide program, in that we discussed the CAREC program overall in all 10 countries, but we do recognize that some individual countries are different, and there's some individual issues and challenges that maybe are not common across the region. So and we have worked on these before as part of other products and services, particularly some of the knowledge products under CAREC and under ADB, and that's the CAREC Aviation program has included that since the CAREC Aviation program was launched about 4 years ago. Just a bit of background: it's almost exactly 4 years. I think that the workshop, initial CAREC Aviation workshop, was held here in Singapore. I see a few attendees on today's webinar were actually at that first workshop. So some of you might recall, it seems like forever ago, but that was actually the beginning of the CAREC Aviation program. And then following that, we did the scoping study, which Simon and I co-authored. We worked on that in 2017. It was published in 2018. And then after that, we had several individual missions to different CAREC countries, again, where we were dealing more with specific challenges in specific countries. And then, of course, COVID hit, and we shifted, and we did the studies last year on the impact of COVID and on the Silk Road Air Pass. And we also had some VCs with some individual countries as well to discuss some individual issues and challenges. And going forward, Valerie mentioned at the beginning about a webinar, about a workshop, a second workshop. So we are planning to have another workshop at some point. Initially, it was going to be actually last year. Now we're hoping maybe later this year, but it really depends on where the borders can reopen, and we can have that this year, or if not, maybe next year. And that's actually the 6th question. And there will be, I should point out, there will be survey forms sent to all the attendees as well. This is more of a polling opportunity, so you might still get some questions sent via email. And the advantage of the ones that are sent by email are that you can actually input your own answers. We don't have that ability with Zoom polls. So that's some of the questions there. You can actually input maybe like specific suggestions or specific areas of interest that we might not be able to cover in a multiple choice question.
I think we get the results there.
Yeah, okay. We'll get enough time for everyone. We can display the results now.
Yeah, they're displayed.
Oh, they are displayed, okay. So that's, I see that, 79% thought it was very useful. 95% of people are interested in another series. The preferred frequency seems to be every quarter. people are interested for all CAREC countries as well as specifics. So a combination of the two, which I think is something we can consider. And people are interested in webinars as well as studies. And almost everyone's interested in a workshop. I think everybody's eager to get out of this virtual world and actually see people again. I certainly am hopeful of starting to travel sooner rather than later, right? Now we have an opportunity to answer any last questions about any of the webinars, and specifically about the CAREC Aviation program, about what I was just talking about and what we were mentioning in the questions. And so if there's anybody who wants to raise their hand and share or ask a question, provide feedback, feel free to do that either by raising your hand or by typing into the Q&A box.
I think what I see is that we're almost at the end, and so probably running a little bit out of time, and maybe some of the attendees unfortunately can't give us more time right now. But what I suggest then is, if you do have questions, of course you can raise them now, but you can also send them via email to the CAREC Secretariat as well as to our experts. And perhaps seeing that nothing is coming up through the Q&A, maybe we can close the webinar. And I just wanted to first of all thank the 4 speakers from the airlines who shared their experience. I mean, it was very interesting for me in particular that those were very different kind of experience. One bigger airline that is pivoting its marketing, although Afghanistan actually has recovered due to a specific market. Maybe its activity. Very difficult situation for Mongolia, where one airline is really suffering from the lockdown conditions of the country, and as well the incredible extra activity for GeoSky and TCA in terms of cargo. What I'm seeing or hearing from these airlines and from Simon's presentation is also the opportunity to benefit from the extra cargo activities that are going on right now. And hopefully some of our counterparts here can benefit from these opportunities. And then I thought that the presentations, really hit home in terms of how do we recover from this. So thank you very much for this. Anything anybody wants to add, or Brendan and Simon?
Oh, look, thank you to everybody that's participated, and thank you, Valerie and Brendan and Oleg from ADB and the team. It's been a pleasure to be a part of these, and hopefully we can do some more following today's session as the program rolls forward. So just to thank you from my perspective.
Yeah, thanks for everyone. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that have helped support this and make this possible. So special thank you to the entire ADB team behind the scenes, and we do look forward to continuing to be engaging. I thought the interactiveness and the ability to have 4 airlines shared was quite an interesting component, and we hope to have more of that in the future. And for those out there listening now or to the recording later on, please reach out and make sure we know about you so that we can include you in future programs. And we always appreciate any feedback. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Just taking this opportunity to thank the team behind. So Rustami and Jean for the translations, Marianne, Pilar, and Mitzi also for handling the IT side and the back office, if I can say, of these webinars, and of course to my colleague Oleg, who is the master of our transport CAREC strategy. So thanks again. Thank you for participation, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.